You're listening to Music Mythology. My name is Sam Romo, and let's talk about some music.
For sure. Let me pull out some more little tidbits here in some of my notes, and then we'll go. Are you already recording?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, awesome. Well, then go ahead and do your intro. I'll pull my stuff out.
Cool. All right. This is Sam Romo. This is episode 8, I believe. I'm sitting down with Scott, my brother, and today we're going to be breaking down, doing a album review of Gil-Scott Heron's Pieces of a Man. This is Gil-Scott's first studio album. It was released on, it was released in 71 and originally recorded on April 19th and April 20th of also 1971. It's a very intense album. It's got a lot of variety in it. We did a jazz episode a couple months ago. I tried to mix up, the interpretation of jazz as much as possible by digging deep into all the different genres and subgenres. And when I stumbled across this album, because I had never heard this album prior to last year, I had realized that I had heard this album prior to last year.
Yeah.
I had heard it sampled, in many things. I'll just jump to this, I guess. I heard it sampled in Kendrick songs, Kanye, Mos Def, Talib Kweli, and Black Star, which is both of them. Realizing that, I know this guy's voice, I know that line, but actually taking it all in as a full album, as a composition, or just a period piece of that time too. Man, it's a great album. Mm-hmm. It's a phenomenal album. That's why I wanted to review it. It was just of all the albums I really started to learn or warm up to during that last year, just in general, this one just I just kept going back to just for not the entirety of the album, but there are definitely just a grand handful of tracks on it that are just awesome, and that's what we'll break down today. But we'll go track by track, but. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, for sure.
In general.
I think it is what they call that, a little earworm that sort of crawls in, and you're like, what? Why does he say that? And just that first track, which is obviously everywhere, that one has so many things that give you all these mental images, and it's been quoted everywhere, and those lines of people throwing that out, and I'm sure we'll get, more into that. I take it as I've watched so many interviews with him, just talking and how much of a kind of thinker he was. He's tied in as kind of an activist, a part of the 60s and 70s and all that, but he's more kind of just outside, a social critic generally, or kind of the prophet role of he just kind of comes in and tells it like it is, and he tells it in a way that you really can't deny. And then you go in, and I think how this record came to be kind of speaks to that as well. So I had just some this is this man's life. These few years he had were so productive that this album came out of. It's just super impressive. So when I was looking at his life, you start out, he's only 21 or so when this album comes out, when he's making it or whatever, and
that's crazy.
Yeah, no, it is crazy. And just these years, right? So he is in he's in undergrad. He's working on a bachelor's at this school that he basically hates. He drops out of there. Then he goes for I think a year or something, and then he's starting a master's program. So he's going they call him a walk-through program. So you get your bachelor's and your master's at the same time at Johns Hopkins.
Okay.
So as he's finishing that, 1970, he's writing a novel for his final thesis. He puts out a novel for the thesis. Before that, he publishes an already independent novel that he's written called The Vulture.
Right.
So it's basically 2 novels there.
Yeah.
And then he's got a book of poetry out all before he finishes his master's. And then the following year, that's when this album comes out.
And he was already a pretty practiced spoken word poet too.
Yeah, like
throughout
performing everywhere, just like on the hustle. He also starts teaching during that time, so he's like an adjunct professor at this time that he's doing all of these different things.
It's nuts. Wow.
So he how this record came to be, he got that published, right? His book published, and the same publisher actually owned the beginnings of the Flying Dutchman, the record company.
Oh, I see.
And so they told him, like he retells this story, they told him like, hey, go see if you can sell some of your poems as lyrics. So he goes to Bob Dylan, who's kind of hungry for something because he's just started this. He has some connections to jazz musicians, but no direction as of yet. And he's like, sure. And I guess just in talking with Scott Heron, you're like, maybe I just need to record this guy. So they've connected. They do Small Talk at 125th, which is the same name of his book of poetry, but they do kind of a live version to raise funds to do this album, and that includes, with studio musicians and all that.
And that includes The Revolution Will Not Be Televised, right? But as a spoken word version.
Yeah. And there's a few that sort of pop up at later times, like Whitey on the Moon comes from that, and then a few other, actually a Kanye sample comes from that, Who Will Survive in America, which later becomes another song that Gil-Scott Heron does, but Kanye uses
Lost in the
that
World.
Line anyway. He throws it in there.
Yeah.
So, but but it's just like, boom, 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 boom. These 4 years, like,
that's crazy.
He's just knocking it out. And then he does, they got 1970 is Small Talk, 1971 Piece of a Man comes out, 1972 Free Will comes out, and then he gets a little break and they do Winter in America in 74. And those are all with Brian Jackson, and probably his most successful outside of this latest one that got more popular after he passed.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, this one's definitely reigns supreme, though, as his first, it's his first, but studio album, that is, but it's it's the highest seller. It's the most sampled. Like a lot of it comes from this one. And it's it's crazy that he. Sorry, I want to turn myself down. It's crazy that he was pumping out so much work. Renaissance man is doing so much
for sure.
And then Bob Dylan must have realized the ambition behind the work and the character behind the work and the man, because Bob Dylan had already been a producer he wasn't a nobody in jazz. He worked with Coltrane, he worked with
he co-wrote What a Wonderful World.
Louis Armstrong is crazy.
So he knew talent.
He knew what was going on.
Lyrics, but it's just amazing of like, I just have this talent here. We got to figure out a way to make it work. And even the guys that he brings in to be the musicians on the album.
They're phenomenal.
Brian Jackson, like all of them are established.
Like Purdy, the drummer, is a session drummer, but him and his band that he would bring in were just phenomenal.
Oh, yeah.
He's one of my favorite players. Everyone's great on this album, but those drums are it's killer. It's killer.
I love, and we'll get into the tracks or whatever, but Hubert Law's on the flute and Ron Carter on the bass. So he had just left Miles Davis, the second great quintet. If you watch that documentary that's on Netflix right now, he's the one that's like, and then Miles wanted me to play electric bass, and I was like, forget that. Like, I'm not doing that. That was him. And so he left the quartet and goes, and he's on this album because he has relations to Bob Dylan. So these were not like jokesters, coming in and being on this random kid's album.
Well, you can tell. If you,
sure.
Especially. Here, let me get the track list. Home is Where the Hatred Is, and When You Are Who You Are. Like the music in that is all. The music in all of it's great, but specifically When You Are Who You Are, that's a very fast song, and it's just stellar. From the guitar solo to the quick drums, and like we were just saying, I love the accompaniment of the flute throughout the whole thing. It's very old school, but it's just. It's perfect. In the playing style of how it's done it's electrifying. It's not just a hokey flute.
The flute is underrated. It probably got abused like around that time, and that's why people stopped doing it.
Yeah,
but
for sure. Man, but this is a good example of a good way to do it.
Oh yeah, yeah. Save the Children for sure.
So the only thing, so we talked about his primary collaborator, Brian, but Brian also played piano for the record.
And wrote most of the music, as I understand it.
Now Gil-Scott wrote the first 4 tracks. It's all him. Everything else was collaboration with him and Brian Jackson. We already talked about the producer. Now the album itself, I have a quote here from Gil-Scott just about the kind of the reception of it. Because like we said, it talks about, there's a lot of content in there. There's a lot of social commentary, a lot of emotional commentary, like, internal problems, struggles and stuff just that we've all could relate to or know someone that could relate to. It's very socially relative album.
For sure.
But
some sociological points I'll make.
Yes, please. But I just wanted to share this album just because, some people couldn't get past the first song, maybe thinking it was too preachy or what. But his quote was, the first track was the only political piece on the album. Very few people heard Save the Children, tracks like Lady Day and John Coltrane, or I Think I'll Call It Morning. They just missed the point. The point became one of the 11 pieces. The least inventive one of the album was the one that was the most heralded. Maybe people were intimidated by things that we felt were normal to comment on because they were part of our lives. To ignore part of your life and not speak on it because it might intimidate somebody is not to be very mature. And I mean, that's proven with this album, that's definitely his perspective, that to not speak of things is immature to him, because he touches on almost any facet of life,
Yeah. I was watching an interview just recently, and he's got a lot of great one-liners, but there's one line that quote kind of made me think of. He said, and I'm gonna butcher it because his delivery was just awesome, but he's like, on the streets, somebody can get over on you and take your bread, but that doesn't mean you have to be quiet about it. So he was just like, I might get hustled, I'm gonna learn something, but I don't have to be quiet about what just happened to me also.
Yeah.
So I can speak on all these different things, and I think he does do a pretty good job. Brian Jackson talked about this revolution will not be televised much later, and he was just saying, like, some of these things are all references to things that were on the TV when he was writing that poem.
Oh, I'm
so
sure.
He's like, some of them didn't even survive to the time they recorded the record. Like, he was just watching TV and he's like, this is a nonsense reference. It's just something that he saw like on a commercial offhand, blah, 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 blah. Like, I'm just throwing it out there. And it's, just saying that this was on TV and that's not where the revolution is going to be.
Yeah,
and
sure.
That was his sort of main point. And I think that part, I understand his frustration with people just jumping on that because it's kind of an anti-commercial like song.
Oh, very
but
much.
then it becomes like his most kind of commercial success. But like one interview that I was watching with him, they were asking him about like, why don't you make music videos or make some sort of visual about these pictures and all that? And he says, well, this is kind of my medium. I'm I write, I'm spoken word. I try to make mental pictures. So whether it's a actual visual or it's a mental image that I'm giving you, like I'm communicating that same thing. Like, this is my talents. This is where my creativity goes. So I go through that. And then he kind of gets into this debate of, not debate really, but, and this was like, mid 70s, about to be the 80s, when he's talking about kids that are like raised by TV and how much they thought back then that people were going to be just,
Zombie.
watching, the TV and to now, like, this would probably blow their minds to see how much tech we have. And maybe it is really doing something to us. But he was kind of engaging in that and saying, like, the revolution will not be televised, is saying, like, you're not just going to be able to view it. Like, it's not going to be something that you're going to consume in the same way that you're consuming this television. It's going to be a change of your mind. Like, that's what he's just trying to get that separate. Like, we're going for something that you cannot see like that because you can't consume it like that, because it's going to be a part of you.
Yeah. And I also took it as it's not going to be marketable. It's not going to be something that's going to fit every metric, fit every demographic, fit everything. And that's why, as a marketing person, that's why I love it so much, is because he tears apart so many, like, it will not go better with Coke. It will not make your teeth brighter. You know, it's like all these one lines, these hooks that all these marketers have been using, you know, he just turned it in on itself. Like, you know, as American, you know, you're not, as a person, but as an American, I'll just keep like that. You're not the media you consume. You know, you're you know, and until you realize that, you're just going to be what people tell you to be.
For sure.
You know,
for sure. And that was like a quote that he continually saying. He's like, I was trying to say that the revolution is going to be in your mind, and it's not something that is necessarily for sale. I think that a lot of the work that sampled it or even like referenced it, some these artists don't understand like that principal argument.
Right.
And even like, I don't know if you went back and listened to that, but there's a Snoop version where he's like, the television or the revolution will be televised. Like, he says it will be televised, and it's just completely like in the face of what he's trying to say. And I mean, I think that, like, you know, some of the protests that we saw this past summer and even around Ferguson are probably like the closest to maybe what Scott Heron had in mind, of saying, like, you know, people's minds are changing towards asking about different things, right? He was very political minded and saying, like, we need to open up our mind and think about the possibilities of where we're at, where we're going. Some of that's economic, but some of that is cultural. Like, in the talk, that album or those short stories, he addresses kind of like these people that are all like super Africa or whatever, like black protesters that are all super Africa, blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, you forget, like, we're also trying to get degrees. We're also trying to, like, there's so many expressions of what this will look like for different people and for different things. And that's the point, is just to move forward and to have that change of mind. So I don't know, but it's Xerox in 4 parts.
Well, yeah, I mean, we can hit it off now. Just focusing on that one. I mean, that when that song starts, I mean, it's like a palpable sense of like almost like urgency.
Yeah, something's
like
about to happen.
Yeah, like the beat, that heart, that the boom, 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 like it's just like it moves you, you know, and it's got that palpable energy of like passion, you know. It's like someone's about to say something, you know. It just feels like that, you know, right off the bat. Perfect.
I think, like, that's probably why it's stuck with so many people. Like, you will not be able to stay home, brother. Like, just goes, you know. Like, you're already there.
Well, it's like he almost, it's like if you're, I don't know, I want to try and make this sound as bad as possible. Let's say your only exposure to the 60s and 70s is like watching Forrest Gump or something, you know, and you're like, you see the general idea of protesting and like the general transition of society into certain, you know, new phases and yada yada. And then if you hear this album, you're like, oh yeah, that'd definitely be the idea that I'd get of a guy standing on the corner like yelling this stuff. And it's like, it will not be televised, you know. Like,
oh, for sure. Yeah, but this definitely sounds like a corner prophet. For sure.
but it's done. It's like translated into such a good, not popular song structure, but just a song structure. It's good. It's a good resemblance of what it really stands for, because like the feeling and the just the delivery that he gives, it's hard hitting, and it has like other little things like the accompanying like flute. Again, the play style of that flute, it's swift, it's very fast and in the background, and it just gives you that heightened.
But I think that's also, I mean, that's why he gets the hated godfather of rap sort of moniker on him because it was really the first time that you had a pairing of great music with, you know, somebody that was really trying to say something, and there was so many lyrics coming at it. Like, it felt like there was a relationship between the music and the poetry.
Yeah.
And before, I don't think that was as popular to do. It was like, oh, we can have music, and then the poem is sort of separate and they're thought of separately.
Right.
But with this one, it does feel like there's collaboration.
There's a
like
flow.
you said, the music is fast. He's talking fast at portions where he kind of slows down. Then the music does its thing, and like, you know, there is a relationship to that. And I could see that as kind of the beginnings when you think about, you know, Curtis Blow and, you know, like Lab 5, like that sort of storytelling over a beat. It's just he had, you know, world-class musicians there.
Yeah, well, and if you want to try and focus on like the beginnings of rap, and especially if you want to be one of the people that like will pinpoint like the Sugar Hill Gang as like the beginning. I mean, that's 79. This is 71, so it's
For
like
sure.
he might not have liked it. That was the mantle that was donned on him by others, but I mean, it's pretty close because like a lot of people refer to it as a proto rap.
Yeah.
Prior to what we'd assume, you know, expect rap to be. Well, sorry, that was a bad way to put it. It was around before no one had the expectation to make that type of music.
Yeah, before they were calling it that and trying to sell it as that.
Especially over jazz, which is just feels much more, I don't want to say like American, but much more like isolated. Like it wasn't like something that he heard from the UK and wanted to do.
Yeah.
It was just like, let's get some musicians that we know. I like jazz. I can do it over that. Let's do it.
Yeah.
You know? And I'm sure that was a lot of collaborative effort from the producer and all these stellar musicians who are like, we have a stellar talent here ready to say something. Let's just make sure we're going to do it well.
We'll be able to connect it.
We'll give them a good foundation. Yeah.
And I think like what he was aspiring to do, I think he was more negative on what, you know, potentially rap was when that was kind of thrown on him. And I think that's what he kind of jerked at because he was really popular. I mean, he was thinking popular music was jazz. Like that was a great art form. And that's what he was aspiring for, blues and jazz, and not like, I think it was like mid 90s. When people started talking about like, oh, you know, this is the proto rapper, like you're saying, like he's the godfather of kind of this music or whatever.
Well,
and that was
at that time.
Yeah, highlight gangster rap and all that jazz. And he was just like, I don't think I did this.
Yeah. Well, especially because at that.
And then some of those years he was gone too. So.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Well, and I also feel that point of that phase of rap culture, it didn't, I mean, some of it did, but not to the point of like modern rap right now. It didn't include like R&B and soul and funk like in a long-winded way. Like it wasn't like a huge composition all the time. Sometimes it was just like what we were just saying is MWA, or it was someone like harder hitting. Now there was people like Public Enemy that maybe he could relate to a little bit more. But the I'm trying to think of like really like mumble rap, real flashy shit. Like I feel like that's the stuff that he did not want to be related to at all. Yeah. And for all we know, there's probably people that reached out to him that were very much that type of artist, but got their spark from, you know, him or something similar.
Yeah,
and he just doesn't like that relative, you know, being relative to that.
That's what it is. And then, I mean, I'm not from there. I've known a few people that are from there, but the way that New York kind of treats as artists and does different things, like their relationship to each other within kind of rap and artists and going back to those roots is very like, you know, clannish almost.
Yeah.
And so like they'll pin that, and it might be the people that were trying to attach to him, you know, he didn't really have a relationship with, but they might have taken inspiration from him and done all that. And he's just like, no, I'm not with that. So like it could have just been as simple as that. Yeah. He wasn't thinking about a broader movement of music and genre and all that. So
yeah. Well, and sometimes when you're inspired by foundations of other types of music and you make what just comes naturally to you, it's like you're tying all these elements together, and sometimes you don't even realize what you're doing, you know. And then when you do it and you introduce someone else to it, and they're like, what is that? What did you just do? It's like, oh, I mixed, you know, some kind of jazz fusion with spoken word, you know, poetry over it, and it's just, you know, a different type of project, you know. And just I wanted to give it I wanted to elevate my message a little bit, and let's accompany it with great music. There's a couple of lines here before we move on to the next one that I wanted to specify as some of my favorite ones, just as saying that this is like a pretty like anti-marketing, you know, whatever. But just saying like, let's see, the beginning part. This is the line. The revolution will not be brought to you by the Schaefer Award Theater. It will not star Natalie Woods, Steve McQueen, or Bullwinkle and Julia. The revolution will not give your mouth sex appeal. The revolution will not get rid of the nubs. The revolution will not make you 5 pounds thinner, because the revolution will not be televised. I just love that. Now it's very period. It's focused of like some of the references he's making, obviously, but it's all stars, you know, celebrity, marketing terms will give your mouth sex appeal, get rid of the nubs. I assume that's an injured soldier, you know, saying like it's not going to take away the war in the past. It's not going to make you 5 pounds thinner. You know, it's not going to be the long-term or a short-term solution. It's just going to be what it is. And but I love that line because it ties in relevant things from the time, but it also just shows again that it's not gonna be relative. It's like you're not. It's not gonna be televised. It's not gonna be marketable. It's like change and social change. It's a feeling. You know, like what you were saying before. It's not. It's not something that you put on. I mean, yes, there's a lot of propaganda you can put on a poster to evoke a feeling, but this is more like pinpointing like all the things around you that you might feel like have a purpose and give you purpose, but it's really just there to aim you a certain way, to buy a product, to believe that this person is an action star, you know, super, you know, person, whatever. But it's like that's just how they're being portrayed to you. You need to remember, you know, you have personal agency too, and this is a person too. There's just so much stuff that I don't know, you could dissect from that.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like what we now call to use the revolution as like a postmodern marketing idea. I always liked the lines, let me know pictures of Whitney Young being run out of Harlem on a rail with a brand new process. There'll be no slow motion or still life of Roy Wilkins strolling through Watts in a red, black, and green liberation jumpsuit that he'd been saving for just the proper occasion. It's kind of like, I mean, those are both, one was the National Urban League and leader of the NAACPs. So, like, these are Black civil rights leaders that he might have considered, you know, more compromised or whatever in league with kind of the structures and powers that be. And then the red, black, and green was like a Pan-African flag, which at the time there was like a big, let's go back to Africa movement. Let's just leave America for African Americans. And so he's saying like, that's not going to be on TV. They're not going to show a bunch of like,
exodus of
African leaders going like, let's go back to Africa for you to watch it and be like, oh, that's awesome.
They're leaving.
But just love it the way he says it too.
Yeah, because also the way he delivers a lot of these lines.
That he has been saving for just the occasion.
Yeah, it's like it's the way he says it is with such confidence. It's almost like he's reporting reality. Like he's like, you might be trying to do this, but that's not how it's going to go. You paying attention?
Yeah,
because here's a live report.
Because he grew up in like Tennessee, and then he moved to New York when he was like a teenager. So he got like the Southern kind of drawl, and then he got the New York tempo. So it's all just like, but then there's still like the slowness that kind of comes with the way that Southerners kind of talk, and I don't know, it's just and he's got a great kind of tenor too. Yeah,
his delivery of whether he wrote it or not, it's just he wears it. You know, he projects it. It's palpable. The other line from this track is. Well, I guess I'll just go with this one. It's the very last one. I just love how it ends. I love how it ends with him, saying, it will not be televised, will not be televised. The revolution will be no rerun, brother. It'll be live. Like, I just love, because that's another clue, like chime in, like, hey, I'm not talking about, I just want to make sure you're paying attention, because what I'm talking about isn't going to be something on the TV. So I'm trying to tell you, it's not going to be there. It's not going to come back either.
Yeah.
It's not going to be something that we're going to talk about if it is impactful. If it's a big enough change, it might not be something that they want to talk about again, because who knows what it is. And to say that it's live, it's like, especially right now, it's like almost everything's live now, with society. And so to end it with that statement of saying, the revolution, I'll put it this way, a revolution will be live. It's like if it's going to be a huge mode of change, it's going to be impactful. It's going to be sensational on all fronts. It's going to be live. You're going to live it. It's not going to be live TV. We're going to stream it. Nowadays, it probably is.
Yeah.
But in the intention he had at this time and the way it ties to modern times, it's like he still hits on both sides. If you want to take it literally, that it will be live, it's going to be live nowadays. Most things really are.
Yeah.
Even if a government wants to keep it down, there's going to be someone streaming it some way, and as long as it daisy chains to the right people and gets to the right people, you'll find an audience. We'll see it. But just it's a heavy song.
Think of let me connect it to something I was thinking about when you're saying that alive, and that makes me think of so Marshall McLuhan is kind of a he was an English professor, but he had the medium is the message. I don't know if you've ever heard that phrase before. His kind of thing was like, we have different technology actually creates different atmospheres or whatever. So the radio, what he considered a hot medium, and then TV was a cold medium, and it's based on kind of like interaction that you could have. But the revolution will not be televised made me think about that too, and also his conversation of on the interview that I watched, him talking about how he was a writer, and that's what he wanted to communicate in mental images, not just those visual images that you could sort of detach from, right? Like if it's a mental image, you are almost doing that work, right? And that's also that play on, this is going to be live. It's not going to be, something that you can tune in and tune out. Yeah. That old, like, Tim Leary kind of connection there with psychedelics. It's like, no, you're going to be in it. Yeah. You have to engage this. You can't miss it. It's going to engage you. Yeah. So it's lasting.
And impactful. Anything else on that one?
I'm good on that one.
Cool. Next track is Save the Children. It's much more optimistic. It's a calm, kind of breezy driving song, and that's why I think it's perfect at the opening line is, if you're driving through the country on a lazy afternoon. I was going to say. That's what the whole thing feels pretty much sums it right up right there.
Although I love the flute. I mean, my favorite part about this is the flute. This one, like...
It's very vibrant.
Yeah. And this one's almost really preachy too. Like this could be a Sunday sermon of.
Well, this is just the positive side of, or the optimistic side of preachy profession. It's just, he's focusing on what it really can be, not just focusing on, like, unfortunately what it is. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I mean, this is like Whitney Houston's The Children Are Our Future. This is like all that genre of music. Yeah. And like, it's the kids.
It's the kids, yeah. But it's a lighter song. It's more hopeful, but it's a beautiful song. I love the line. They seem to be so unaware of the things that they'll soon have to take care of, and he duplicates that throughout, saying things like, soon it will be their turn to try and save the world. Right now they seem to play such a small part of the things that they soon will be right at the heart of. It's just a good summary of generational progress and change, and addressing what needs to be changed, I guess, but in not a hard way. Yeah. And that's why I made that quote, or I shared that quote earlier, is because that's what he talks about, is literally the first. You might think the beginning of the album is heavy, he said, but then once you get past that song, it's like I just switch it to the other side of the frequency of saying, like, I'm still being very serious here and commenting on some very serious things, but it's just you can be optimistic about it. Like I'm not, all doom and gloom, because you gotta have hope, and that's what the song's about.
Come back to the children for the hope, for sure. I just think of, and she's had some generational conflicts like now, but that Greta, what is her name? The activist.
Yeah, I know you're talking
girl,
about.
and she's just like, she's talking to older generations to be like, you are giving us this problem, but you're not allowing us to, engage in it and help in it in the same way. So it's like, you need to listen to us because we're the ones that are inheriting this world. And I kind of get that same vibe from this song. He's at least like, hey, like, they don't care right now, or maybe some of them do, but they're going to be it, and these are the things that we're handing down for sure.
Yeah, and I don't think there'll be a day that the song isn't relevant, or the message of the song isn't relevant. Because every generation you're put through some test from the previous.
Yeah, until we're in some children of men situation.
Hopefully not. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm hoping we do not
hit that.
And if you haven't seen that movie, Children of Men, right?
Yeah,
that's a phenomenal movie. It'll freak you out. Do you have anything else on that one? All right, cool. The next song, the next track on the album is Lady Day and John Coltrane. For those that don't know, Lady Day is, I guess you'd call it a nickname or an alternative name for Billie Holiday, famous singer. This one's more groovy. It's more jazzy. I mean, the whole album is jazzy, but this one I just feel like has a little more jazz spice on it. It's basically just an ode to Billy and John, and the magic of music, the healing ability of music. Like the ability of music to get rid of personal problems, or feelings, or worries, existentialism, all that kind of stuff. Just, but it's a great song. It's very groovy. I really like it. I'm trying to think of. Let me see. Like my favorite line from the song is. Here it is, sorry. Plastic people with plastic minds on their way to plastic homes. No beginning, there ain't no ending, just on and on and on and on. It's all because they're so afraid to say that they're alone until our hero rides in on his saxophone. I just love that line because that line right there is the thread for, is the hole that the thread goes through for the whole album, of stating, it's because they're also afraid of saying that they're alone, realizing that, they're afraid to say it. That's what this album's about, is he's not afraid to say these things, and he doesn't think that there should be a problem with saying these things. Is because, it's like this kind of stuff. Like later on, like I feel like some of this will tie into the story song of Pieces of a Man, where he's talking about, how a strong man can change, how the world and environments and connections and social ties and social pressures can change you and crack you, put you into pieces. And that the only way to, because he talks about in that song Pieces of a Man, we'll get to it, but he talks about the way you mitigate that, the way you fix that is you talk about it, you're open about these things, you share it, you involve your community, you do something about it. And that's why I love that line is because there are a lot of people that are afraid and they don't even realize it because they're just doing what they've always seen in their lives other people do, but you're not being as expressive as you could be, and I feel like that's what the song is talking, praising the power of music, but also saying that, almost praising them as, look how expressive they were. It makes me feel better. It makes me feel like I could do something too, that I'm not just a name. I'm not just what I think I am today. I could be a musician. I could be this. I could do all sorts of things, but I have to admit it to myself. I have to talk about it. I have to be open about anything that I think I am. I don't know.
I like that interpretation. No, see, I a similar vein, but I also kept, or maybe this is the first time it's really introduced, but the drug connection. So this song kind of reminds me of John Legend's "Let's Get Lifted," where he kind of does that interplay of like, are we talking about music here, or are we talking about drugs? Are we talking about like how a song can make you feel, or how some sort of like substance can make you feel, right?
Okay.
Because there's some, some slang of John Coltrane being cocaine and being an escape, right? So there is that kind of element that could be kind of a double meaning on these different things. But then it's also like, all throughout his life, he was very complimentary of Ella Fitzgerald and John Coltrane. And like I said, like that was what he aspired to do with his music, was to put out something that was as respected and as well known as like the jazz that he admired and he looked up to. So I think it could be both, like as much as the drug themes sort of take over kind of on the rest of this album, like I think there could be that element, but then it's also like music is really hopeful, and it helps us to get out of these different things. If it's escapist, maybe it's like a door to that world where we could go there and not just like escape to and have to come back.
Yeah, like what he said, I'm not just gonna tune in and tune out. Like I'm not just gonna zone out. It's purposeful. It's remedy. It's therapy. But I do see what you're saying, and I think that's a lot of the writing in this album is it's double meaning.
Oh yeah.
I mean it's a part of music writing that makes it so,
and poetry too, fun. And that's kind of what this primarily was, and then he sort of elevated or wanted to get it out more. So poetry can always have multiple meanings, and I'm sure he'd be like, yeah, that's exactly what I'm
oh, for sure. Yeah, well, and like what you were saying about Coltrane and his lifestyle, I mean, that wasn't secret.
Yeah. Oh, so, not at all.
Yeah. But no, that is very true. It's very the song structure is awesome. I love the way that song sounds, and little piano solo in the middle.
Yeah,
it's a good track. It's one of my favorite ones. The one after that is this one might be my favorite one on the album. I know this was a single. There's only one single for this album released prior, and it was this one, Home is Where the Hatred Is. Obviously a play on the line, home is where the heart is. It's more social commentary, but it's written from the perspective of a junkie, from a loner junkie. Kind of to give you relevance, kind of give you insight that, you might discount this person, because it's a moment in their life that they made bad choices, but you might be able to relate to them more than you might imagine. But it's hard hitting. It's a hard hitting beat, quick guitar, just feeling almost like work needs to be done. It's like, like it feels like the cadence or the feeling of a heavy conversation. Like the way the song feels like you're not just going to talk about just how you're disappointed, but you're going to work it out. You're going to talk about a lot of heavy things. But it's a serious song, produced and it's a serious song produced and written very well, to where this has been sampled many times. And it's just I think it's one of the stronger songs on the album, if not the strongest one. I can break down some of my favorite lines. I don't know if you have anything you wanted to add.
Well, I was just going to say, like, I think having the song in the record is him wanting to talk about it, but I think the actual like character in the song doesn't want to talk about it. And I think like that's with the rhythm, that it sounds like a train, almost like I'm leaving, like I can't go home, like I got to keep on going this because I know all of these things that are home, and so I need to be on the run, like but I like there's a lot of great lines in here. My favorite is that you keep saying, kick it, quit it, kick it, quit it. But did you ever try to turn your sick soul inside out so that the world can just watch you die?
Well, that's I want to read the whole thing really quick, because it says, stand as far away from me as you can and ask me why. Hang on to your rosary beads. Close your eyes to watch me die. You keep saying, kick it, quit it, God. But did you ever try to turn your sick soul inside out so that the world can watch you die? He's talking about how people can clutch onto religion and their individual choices to say like almost like thoughts and prayers, like saying like, oh, I'll give you my thoughts and prayers, but I won't involve myself in your change.
Like I'm not actually gonna touch you and be with you on a Saturday night that you want to do this, or you're gonna go somewhere.
Like, I'm gonna actually be a sponsor. I'll just thoughts and prayers. I'm thinking about you right now.
I got you.
Yeah, but that's one of the harder hitting lines, because especially at this time, I imagine that wasn't a popular thing to want to hear, to criticize church or church practice as a as a non-reassuring act of being like, he's literally calling it shallow. It's like you're literally just standing aside is all you're doing. It's a very heavy line.
And I think, it's just like such a vivid picture of what admitting maybe to yourself, admitting to your family, to your community that you have a problem. Like,
and what it feels like.
Yeah, when people have addictions, it's like, I'm going to put my whole self inside out for you, and then I'm expecting, or you've already done it, like rejected small pieces of me. So why am I just going to put myself out and then really feel that pain and that rejection?
And I feel like that term of saying, turn your sick soul inside out so that the world can watch you die. I feel like the term watch you die is, maybe that's a double meaning, like saying turn your sick soul inside out, because there's potential you could die to yourself, and maybe move on. Or there's the potential of you turn yourself inside out, trying to prove yourself or prove your character and show what could be to someone that maybe you loved, or a community that you thought you could trust, and then it wasn't. They did not help you, and that's why home is where the hatred is, because home isn't warm. I don't, when I turned myself inside out and tried to show myself to someone, whether it be my father or my community or what, that they didn't welcome me.
So you got it both ways, like from the community you thought, and then from the drug itself that sort of let you down, and it's still there, like you're always connected to
that too. No, it's true. Because especially if he's talking from the perspective of a junkie, most of the time a junkie is aware that the drug is a solution and a problem. Right? To them, it's kind of the same thing. They're not dumb. They don't think that this is the forever solution. They know it's momentary. But that's
there
all
was one interview I watched. It's probably the same interview, but it was like one of the last that he gave, and he was talking about like people don't set out to become junkies. You don't like, I'm going to pick up this habit, this is going to ruin my life or whatever. He's like, it's just how some people react to life and things that happen. And he tells this has this like really intense story. This guy was like a traffic terminal sort of director or whatever, and this one day he made like a choice for two different planes. Like two different planes were coming in, and one was and I guess he told them, or tried to tell them where to go, and like lost one of the planes. Like it crashed and it like killed a bunch of people, and he was just like, the man was never the same because of that kind of decision. And so he started coping in different ways, and then ended up, and like he said, now was a homeless man that he was interacting with, but it was like he didn't set out in his life like that. Wasn't his aspirations to become a junkie or to be addicted to substance. It just how life happened to him and how he reacted to it. So it's more of like trying to humanize it. And I definitely think that conversation was not happening in 1970.
No, absolutely not.
It's hardly happening now. I mean, it's kind of happening now with, painkillers and opioids and all that. But it's a different audience now.
Well, and I think people are realizing that it's not normal to also get berated by like pharmaceutical commercials all the time.
The opioids is a different thing for sure.
But no, for sure. And but it's another relative song about drug involvement from the next series of lines, like home is where I live inside my white powder dreams. Home was once an empty vacuum that's filled now with my silent screams. Home is where the needle marks try to heal my broken heart. I mean, that those last like handful of lines, that's like that is some of the pinnacle of the focus on the drug reliance and use, in a lifestyle as a solution. Because I say where he lives inside, it's a dream, like it's not just a white powder reality. Even it's like I just feel like he's saying that he's aware. Again, he's aware it's a problem and a solution, because it's an escape. While you're escaping, you're not yourself. And
which one thing, like, and this is kind of the power of the poet, but at this point, there's no documented, I guess, that he was using. But later on in his life, he did have a spell with drugs where it wasn't good for him, and he was, addicted to these substances, and it was kind of controlling what he was doing. But at this point, for all intents and purposes, he's just looking from the outside in and being able to describe this feeling and this emotion. I think that's pretty powerful, just for him as a writer, and getting at that, just him as a person, being that empathetic to what's going on.
Yeah, well, and to be like what you're saying, to be a megaphone to a smaller voice, especially at the time, especially during the 70s, that you had to know the right people, get the right connection. That's what we were talking about just in the beginning. Is that this is a prime takeoff point because of everybody involved, from the artist to the producer to him being such a force, that all it had to be was good timing, and that's what it was. And there's a lot to
say. I'm double checking this interview. There was a OK Player, which is kind of affiliated with the Roots. Like, it's this little website, and they do different music blogs or whatever. But they interviewed Brian Jackson, and I think it was on this interview where he was just talking about, like, when they met, they just wanted to write songs that they would want to hear. And he says, not that nobody else could write these songs, but that nobody else would write these songs. So they were writing on all these like random topics and all these things that people were afraid to really touch or to come on. And that was just kind of like, Scott Heron's like view on the world is like, he's like you were saying, I want to talk about this because nobody's talking about it. Yeah. And I think that these songs kind of need to be heard. yeah,
and it's almost like his take on it wasn't that he thought this was extremely controversial, that this was like the tip of a controversy spear. It was just more like, this is just a lens over like reality. Like, this is what I see. This is what other people see. Here's a perspective of a man falling apart, or here's a perspective of a junkie. There's so many different things you can look at and show you that there's a variety in life, and there's a variety in life paths, and that they all cross a lot. It's like, but not all of them are the same. Yeah,
the quote here, it is from that OK Player interview. He says, we didn't want to write songs that anybody else would write. I didn't say could write, but would write. What we saw were people writing songs about unrelated love, unrequited love, and trying to get in somebody's pants. There were plenty of songs like that. We saw that we couldn't really add much to that dialogue and conversation. We looked elsewhere, and what we came up with is the fact that we were young black men living in America, which was a frustrating and frightening experience. We did what we knew best. We decided that we would write about that. We were lucky to have been able to do the first album, which was basically interested in spoken word. It was cheap and plentiful.
But high quality.
There you go.
All right, you got anything else for that one?
That's it.
All right, awesome. So the next track is When You Are Who You Are. This is one of my favorite ones. It's a beautiful song. It's lovely. It's much lighter. It's much more just lighthearted. And it's just, it's just trying to find the beauty in who you are. It's got a bright saxophone, quick beat. It's just Yeah, it's a good groovy song. And a tremendous guitar solo. I want to make sure I mention that. Because, man, it's super good by Burt Jones on the guitar.
Norberto.
Yeah. My favorite line on that song is, I'm impressed every time you smile, when I feel that you mean to smile, because you can be so very beautiful when you are who you are. It's just a statement about the beauty of being genuine. You know me. I love reality. I love keeping things as genuine as possible. And I think that's when you can truly embody and feel, beautiful, is when you're doing something that you perceive to be beautiful. It's like if you're feeling yourself, you're feeling good. It's like you'll feel better. You'll talk better. You'll perform better. When you're talking in terms of reality, when you're talking in terms of it's like you might think you're the greatest guitar player in Texas. It's like until you actually branch out of your group of people and push yourself and you realize I'm not maybe as good as I thought I was, but that's not a bad thing. You're just realizing where you are, and that now you've achieved potential. You've achieved the next step of maybe what you thought you were already great at, and that's beautiful because. That's just being human. Is you grow, you progress, and the quickest, best way to do that, and the healthiest way to do that, is just never lying to yourself, never lying to what you think your environment really is. Always keeping in check what it really is, and that's what I think this song is kind of like an appreciation of that, of saying, when you are who you are, and you're not just trying to be what other people want you to be or what you think you're supposed to be as a young person, as a young man, as a young black man, there's so many layers that you could focus on and think that's supposed to be my trajectory because of X. Mm-hmm. But I just feel like this song is a good reminder of you don't have to be what someone tells you to be. The following line, when he says, every morning when you wake up, you put on a new disguise. How long do you think it would take me to realize? Or towards the end, where is it? Where is it? Maybe it's not this song. That it's on, but just that fact that one line is good enough. We're talking about people never see the want to be themselves. They end up running in circles, confused, just like everyone else. Saying that just it's a mad game. It's like it's a colony of ants. Everyone's got their mission, but they're crisscrossing from others. Everyone's doing so many things, and some people are so focused on their career and just waking up and going to do that they're just focused on doing that well, while there's other people trying to consider their neighbor, their brother, and their father all in the same, mindscape of thinking that I just need to get to my job. And if that's who you are, you need to embrace that you can reach out to people, that you could be more. But just that's what I feel like when I listen to this song. It's just it's a beautiful description of how grand it is to be genuine.
That's good. That's kind of related to what I'll call like a stretch interpretation. I'll give you that forewarning note of this is like me reading into the poem and listening to the song. But I also think that this is kind of with the, which is relatively new-ish about his time, probably writing this, was like the Black is Beautiful movement, and saying so many times during that time and now a lot of Black people sort of argue that there's a face that people put on to go and interact with their work and with everybody else. So they're making themselves more acceptable than who they really are. Even, this past year, there's a lot on Black Twitter of people saying oh, you're about to see my real face when I wake up and I'm, on Zoom because this is my house. And it's a big thing for Black women in their bonnets that they wear, to keep their hair. And so to have a Zoom call with your bonnet on is kind of you're chopping your face, right? Yeah. And you're showing that. And so I think, a stretch interpretation I'd say for this is like, when you are who you are, then you are showing like your real smile. Like he mentions there, when I see your real smile there, not just like this polite smile that you give to your bosses or you give to, the white people that you have to interact with or whatever. But it's like, you can be really beautiful. We can be really beautiful as just ourselves and going out and interacting with that. When he throws it out to people never seem to want to be themselves. So it's like you're kind of accepting this mode of like, if this isn't you, then why are you pushing yourself so much hard to be that? And all it is just confusing you and what you're, wanting from the world. Like you've convinced yourself that this is the face that you want to put forward when you can really be beautiful just the way you are. I mean, overall, it's one of the most positive probably song on
absolutely
this whole thing.
And it ties in perfectly with that reality check kind of theme of like playing it how it is, calling it how it is.
The only part that's confusing to me about the song is the get it,
no,
get it,
no,
get it, get it.
That was literally what I was about to say. Is that's my favorite line of the song.
But it's like,
it's not. No,
that's where we're going.
No,
I mean, like maybe in the recording they were going to keep going, but it seemed like they just cut the song off like 10 seconds after. He's like, okay, play.
No, I say that half jokingly that it was my favorite line of the song, but it is one of my favorite moments of the song because I look forward to that ender every time.
So I was like, what? What do we call it out?
I think it was either they faded out, in the music, or it was like, let's keep because it's such a high energy song. And it's like, let's, what's something you say when you're at, a slam poetry meeting and someone's, really taking it down, you snap and you get it,
but it just feels like, wait, are we about to go into more? And it's like, and then the next song is like,
I think I'll call it.
I guess it's not as sad, but
still, it's a slower, somber, not more serious feeling, but it's just calmer. Yeah, for sure. It's funny.
I'm expecting like the flute to go off again, like
flute solo, but if we want to move into this next one,
sure.
I think I'll call it Morning. It is a much calmer song, but that's a great song. Song about, I don't know, you could just say it's a strong will for living. My favorite line, which I guess would you call it the hook or the chorus maybe, the "Be No Rain" line. In the song, I love that line because he opens it up by saying, I'm going to take myself a piece of sunshine and paint it all over my sky, and then there's the break, the "Be no rain," and then it's like it just slows down, and he says it again, and it's just, I don't know, the way it's composed and just that line, there will be no rain. To me, that's just such a, like the break and the line itself projects seriousness, like not seriousness as in like I'm talking about something really serious, but saying like it's a serious statement. Like I'm making it's a statement that's going to ring clear and it's important. Like saying that not what's the word I'm looking for? Like a word of affirmation. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's like when he's saying that there be no rain. It's like it's like you're stepping with steps of hope. You're not just moving through hoping things are going to work out. He's putting it out there. He's putting it into the ether, into the universe. Yeah. There's going to be no pain. There's no rain. It's not going to happen. I'm going to call it a beautiful reset. I'm going to call it morning. I'm going to call it a new beginning. I don't know. You have anything to add?
No, I mean, I think that one is pretty straightforward. Like, I was thinking almost like a, you can have a play on mourning, like crying or whatever. Like he's flipping that.
Yeah,
saying,
that
like,
too.
I'm going to call, this morning, I'm going to flip it into happiness so that even when people call mourning, it's like, no, I'm calling that a bright sky. Like, why should I live in sadness? Why should I live without hope? Exactly. It's like, I'm going to call, I'm going to call this whole thing opposite so that I'm never going to that space and I'm never living in that kind of zone. Yeah. But definitely a positive song.
Because just sticking with that semblance of either word mourning is you look at mourning as in grief, you're going backwards in time. You're focusing on the past, and you're talking about mourning as like tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's tomorrow. It's, it is the morning. And it's a new start, new beginning, type of thing. And it's a song talking about why make compromise all the time? Like when he says, why should I survive on sadness and tell myself I got to be alone? Why should I subscribe to this world's madness knowing that I've got to live on? I think I'll call it mourning. Like saying, why, when I know things are so wrong, when I know when I'm being, commanded or forced into is so unnatural or so unfitting, why should I be okay with that? Why should I be okay with
something different?
Yeah. And almost like, because I believe in this very much, is when you come to new terms with yourself and realize that that's all it is, realize that you've just kind of forced yourself into a thought structure of thinking like, I can't do that. That's not who I am. It's like, well, you're not practiced in it yet. Maybe look at it like that.
Yeah.
That maybe you're not a guitar player and you've only played a few times, or you've never even really learned a chord structure or whatever. Well, maybe you just need a new morning. You need a new day, a new way to start.
And I think that's where I was picking up on with like, maybe it was a double play on mourning of just saying like, I'm going to call this feeling something like, I'm going to name it
more positive.
So that I can have this relationship to it that's not what it's, being fed to me or what I've been told to accept as that.
Which again fits perfectly in the lines of the album, theme of the album,
for sure.
I'm going to call it what it is, and I'm not going to fool myself into thinking that it's what the commercials tell me that it is, and that it's more in to think a certain way. It's like I just call it how it is.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a good one. Then the next track after that is the title track, "Pieces of a Man." Much more slower. More serious. It's a strong song, basically about a man, or I guess a father figure, kind of falling apart in the like a puzzle dropped on the ground. Pieces of a man. This is another song with a bunch of double meanings. But you look at the first set of lines of saying. Well, I'm not going to start it from the very beginning. Well, I guess I could. It's not that much. It's saying jagged jigsaw pieces tossed around the room, or about the room. I saw my grandma sweeping with her old straw broom. She didn't know what she was doing. She could hardly understand that she was really sweeping up pieces of a man. Again, just talking about mother figure being involved with a man falling apart, with a hard time in life, and this is all, as far as we know, it's fiction. It's just a story of a man that throughout the song, he finds out he's being let go in the middle of the song. So it's almost like he's talking about how he went from being a father figure with a job and being a provider in a place in the world, or a perception of that, and then with the simple action of offensive action of a mailman showing up with a letter saying that he had been let go, he just degrades, unwinds. Where he talks about in the middle of the song, tells a tale of being laid off, and then saying lines of he could hardly understand that he was talking to pieces of a man, the mailman that is. Was speaking to a broken man. I saw the thunder and I heard the lightning and felt the burden of his shame. And for some reason, unknown reason, he never turned my way. That's a very heavy line, because I feel like that's him addressing like that father-son relationship. That if a father feels like he's losing his footing, in his life and his standing in society, that he wouldn't talk about that with his son, because he's not. I'm not going to address that yet, because I'm not going to open up about the pains of being a man, or the pains of losing, because I don't want you to see me be weak. Very old school. I feel like that's not healthy, because it's not real. It's like if your son's seeing like this this character in the song, if he sees you reeling from it and perceives it as, I saw the thunder and the lightning, as descriptions of how you're acting.
Yeah.
It's like you're not handling it well. And if you're not going to handle it well, you need to at least, explain why it's so impactful. Otherwise, your son's just going to see an example of, you lashing out and thinking that that's okay to do, but because he's ashamed, but that's where it comes from. That part of the song of him saying he doesn't want to talk about it. He turned away. So he doesn't want to talk about how he couldn't provide. He couldn't be the person he thought he had set himself up. And I think, again, that ties into the theme of calling it what it is. It's like, well, maybe you need to do something more. Maybe you need to be more versatile, because you're not even willing to address what just happened. I don't know, just.
See, I was, so, just with my background, this for me connects to kind of a broader social theme of, if you go to the genius.com for this one, the commentator has this like whole long thing about the history of Black masculinity and all this jazz. And the first comment is like, this is bullshit. But then the rest of it kind of defend. But for me, it makes me think of a book that actually came out, was really influential about unemployment in minority communities in the 60s and 70s and 80s too, called When Work Disappears. And it's William Julius Wilson is the sociologist who kind of looked at this, but he's looking at, we kind of think of crime and poverty together, and we think of them as like individual kind of pursuits or whatever. When it's these conditions, like when you have mass unemployment, it creates kind of a need for something, right? You become more isolated because you can't reach out to your neighbors. And even if you could reach out to your neighbors, if they don't have any resources, it's like, there's so much that we hold as our society, especially in America, that we connect with work. And so work makes us valuable. Work makes us, contributing, productive citizens. And so when we take that away or when it disappears, then we really fall on, our worst, sort of nature, our, worst sort of demons, and that come out because we don't have anything that we could point to and be like, no, I'm a pillar of, stability. I'm a pillar of society because I have this job and I have this work. And I think like, Scott Heron in his way is already identifying that way before this would work, sort of theory in 96, like looking at the data from the 60s and the 70s, like when manufacturing jobs and all that were leaving the U.S. in the first round, and you had these massive unemployment rings, like the mailman says, there's 9 others and the same thing, but like those jobs meant something different to each of those individuals. And so it's like you have a bunch of different pieces that are all scattered about. It's a really great, I think, picture of opening up like, a woman is just cleaning a house, but these are like the pieces of his life. This is the stability, like and that also, excess is what makes him useful.
Well, and literal. Like I take it also that he lashed out. Like this character, like,
well, and then they said like he gets into crime too. Like later on in the poem, it's like now he's on that because that's what pieces of men do. They find something to attach themselves to. Whether that's some drugs or some poverty or whatever. Like he saw it visually, like it's almost like Breaking Bad, but not a successful drug dealer type, just you went bad real fast and it got bad real fast and now you're in jail.
And more in that where he says when they say the response of just want to get this first line right, where it says, and now I hear the sound of sirens come knifing through the gloom. This right here, they don't know what they are doing. They could hardly understand that they're only arresting pieces of a man. I feel like that's also kind of addressing that, that he might be arrested because of his actions of acting out in anger, doing all sorts of things. But it's almost saying that, they could hardly understand that they're only arresting pieces of man. So they're not there to understand why he's broken.
Oh,
They're
for
there to
sure.
respond. And that he's also, it's a momentary thing.
Yeah.
And I feel like this kind of touches on it, but it made me think about this, that, all criminals, like, I kind of want to I know we talked about Neil Young earlier, but, he has that line that every junkie's like a setting sun. And then he has a song called the Needle and the Damage Done. And I take that line as every junkie, every criminal is someone that just made a momentary choice. They made a choice that diverted their life. It included people in their social circle that maybe they never expected, but now it's changed them, unexpectedly. But most of it can be pinpointed to a phase in life. And until you've introduced to someone that there's more phases to life, they're just going to be stuck in something. And so, to say that, he's falling apart and he's only pieces, I just feel like, and that they could hardly understand. And it just, the whole meaning of the song, it all wraps around one moment that he lost his job. Mm-hmm. And prior to that, seemed like, who knows, things were whatever they were. But I just feel like that it makes me think of that. Like, also, like, I don't want to get super heavy, but like talking about the prison system and thinking that, should people be sent to prison purely to be, locked away? Or is there actually reform supposed to be done? Are they supposed to be learning to be a better citizen? Are they trying to recoup things? How are they being counseled? Are they going through therapy? Like, is it just you did something bad, here's a consequence, you're locked in your room for 10 years? Are you trying to understand what broke them, or is that not your job?
Yeah, that is a lot broader. I think it's definitely a question that's being asked here, right? Like, each of these people, they don't understand, each of the people that are interacting, right, with the pieces don't understand that we're just dealing with the pieces of a man. I don't know if, and this is kind of what that genius, like the long little diatribe thing, like initially gets at, is like they go to even like the 3/5 kind of compromise thing and think about like, just them as pieces and kind of like the financial element. Yeah, the financial element gets them that. So I'm not going that far, but he doesn't really like introduce the idea that there was a whole man that had the job. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's also true, yeah.
So it's like, these are just the pieces, like, this is how we've connected. And so when you take away kind of the unifying thing, like I was thinking of just the job of, this is how I'm connected to this is my stability. If you take away that, then you are just going to get pieces because this is all that we have, right? Like,
or realizing, like what we were kind of talking about at the beginning, is let's say, this is all just concept, but let's say this career guy, and the father figure, he's maybe he's a banker, maybe whatever, but that's him. To him, that's him. He's working all the time. That is what he is. And it's almost like, like me, I might be a salesperson by trade, but I have this show. I'm a musician.
Yeah.
I like to draw, I like to play games. There's a lot of other things that make me outside of what I do as my job.
Well, even just to tie in with what you were saying about the junkie, like that's a one season type thing. Like that's just one piece of their personality. That's one piece of their life. And so we're always just interacting with the different pieces.
Maybe he never saw himself as being a sit at a desk career type person. So to him, maybe this is him also talking about there's much more to life than just your career. So maybe he's saying that there.
Oh, he's definitely saying that throughout this album.
Oh, but yeah, for sure. But meaning that, like with this song though, like pinpointing it more and saying that, look, he lost his career and now he feels like he's lost as a person.
For sure.
Do you not realize that there's more to that?
For sure.
And touching on it with light hints, like saying that his mother was having to clean up after him because of how shitty he was being. That he couldn't even admit and open up to his son. So both sides of generations, he's not even going to address because he's going to fold in on himself instead.
Well, and it's not even like he's interacting with the authority either, like, or people outside, because the mailman is still getting pieces.
Right.
Everybody's just getting pieces, and without that unifying job or whatever, like,
Whatever gave him his groove.
yeah. And so you connect with that, and when he blows up or when he throws all the pieces around in the storm that's sort of created by that vacuum,
Yeah.
then you get arrested.
Yeah. Anything else on that one?
No, it was a great. It's randomly sampled, I think, by. Why did I just space on his name?
Kendrick?
No. He's got like writing credits of it from Black and Blue. Why am I spacing his name?
Are you talking about the Black Keys thing?
No.
Oh, from his group.
No. It's like he takes some riffs. The guitarist for Black and Blue. What's that album? What's his name? Gary Clark.
Oh, sorry. There's so many black and.
I know.
I was like, which way are you spelling it? Because I don't know. Are you spelling it BLU?
Can't you see in my mind? I'm spelling.
Well, because
it.
there's that. Oh no. That's called Black Rock. Never mind. I'm thinking of something else. The Wu-Tang and Mos Def and Black Keys. I'm thinking I'm all over the place.
That's a good album.
That is a good album. That's very random. But yes, I'm sorry. Yes, you're right. Yeah,
he gets
Gary
writing
Clark's
credits on
first
that.
album.
They still some.
Yeah.
He still some lines or something from Brian Jackson, so they give it to him.
Yeah.
Writing credits.
It's another phenomenal album. I'd love to review that album someday too. Black and Blue. It's a great album. The next track, following Pieces of a Man, is A Sign of the Ages. It's also serious, a slower song, more social commentary, of course. I don't have a crazy ton to say about this. I just have my favorite line from the song, where it says, "The world's full of children who have who grew up too fast." Mm-hmm. I mean, that's just a general great statement, a great reminder that you can grow old, but you don't always grow up.
Yeah. I'm trying to find the exact line, but it always makes me think of Ben Folds' line. Oh gosh, it's saying kids today grow up too fast. They get nostalgic about the last 10 years or the next 10 years before the next 10 years have passed.
No, that's a good line.
So it's like, we're always kind of like, you're there, but you're not appreciating, the journey that you've taken.
There's no romance.
It's like...
It's like wine. It's like wine. There's no romantic feelings about it until it's aged enough.
Oh, nice. This is an incredibly depressing song, I feel like.
This one?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, it is. It's yeah.
But I think, if he's writing this 69, 70, and one thing that he always, like, if you see different interviews with him talking about the revolution will not be televised, he always says, like, brothers are thinking that the revolution was going to come in the 60s, and they were saying, revolution's here, and then 3 or 4 years later, and nothing's happened. Like, this is kind of that feeling, like, we thought that the revolution was going to come, but now it's just like, this is it. Like, this is life. We get no peace. It just keeps on going until
All we get
you
are
die.
a sign of the times.
Yeah, it's just like this is this is all you get, just more of the same. And 69, 70, I could see that. Like,
Oh, yeah.
it could be really dark especially if you were super in that movement. I had just watched, I'm trying to think of what year that was, that Netflix, The Chicago 7. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of that same deal. But, Abby Hoffman kind of like is in that mode, and he never realizes the revolution that he wanted to come, and he ended up committed suicide late 80s. And so it's just like that fervor that was there in the 60s just really didn't translate or go into exactly what some of those like more radical activists wanted to happen.
Yeah.
And so dealing with that and, you know, handling that emotionally was probably pretty difficult, and feels like this song. Yeah. There's no peace on earth, man. No peace until you die.
Yeah. That is a heavy line. There's also the weird thought of realizing that this was 71, and not trying to get extremely political here, but I just know that when Nixon was reelected, that, you know, a lot of people realized we're going to stay around in the war longer. Things could go a direction that I don't jive with.
For sure.
And because I remember like a lot of artists when he got reelected were very surprised because of how poorly the war was, you know, perceived by Americans in society, that when he got reelected, like I know a lot of artists kind of withdrew and freaked out for a moment. Like I know like John Lennon like reeled from it for like a long time. He didn't think it was going to happen.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to know that like a song kind of like this was set up right on the edge of kind of like a reminder of like, yeah, no, the pacing really isn't changing. It's changing, but the social pacing isn't like turning a lane or turning into a new hallway. Social change is like a battleship.
Yeah.
And when you make a new direction, it takes that ship a long time.
Yeah, for sure.
Because you might gain 1% of change, but 1% for a degree difference on a battleship after 10 years, Yeah.
Well, that was always the Obama argument of like, we're not, his metaphor, we're not turning a little boat, we're turning a big ship.
Yeah.
So if I do something now, then it goes towards that. That's a good connection with Nixon and Gil-Scott Heron, though. So he was probably just like, I can see it. Just like, some people were saying about our times of like, these are the movements, these are the people that are going to stay in office no matter what. And you can write a really sad song about that.
Yeah, well, this definitely is that. You got anything else on this one?
No.
Okay.
The next one's about the same.
Yeah, it's true. Or Down You Fall. It's very, nothing against the anybody involved in this song, but it's just such a, when I've listened to it more, I've become to appreciate the timing change where he's like, "Oh, down you fall," and then it picks back up into the next thing like a little bit more. At first, it was a little jarring because it just felt kind of like a not lax, but kind of like just like a calm like it just didn't seem
intentional.
Yeah, it didn't seem super electrifying or sensational in a way. It was just kind of dull. But I do like this song. I feel like he sings more, like the way he's saying the lines. He's more singing it than speaking it in some of the other ones. I like how the second half of it is faster pace, how the pacing of it picks up a little bit. I do like that. But it's basically a song about pushing forward. My favorite line. Excuse me. My favorite line from this song is, "I can't stand to see your face because you've seen the weakest me, and now you know I'm only human instead of all the things I'd like to be." Again, just tying into that realness of like pride. That's all that's talking about, is being like, I hate that you saw the weakest me when it wasn't the person I've been projecting out this entire time. It's like in this song, it's almost like a feeling, a statement of regret, but also a statement of relief, like being like, I hate that you saw that, but like now kind of that burden's been lifted in a way because now you really know who I am. I know the song is heavier where it doesn't really give that off, but the rest of that album though kind of speaks to that, of saying, you're beautiful when you are who you are. You're, I'm trying to recall the line from the Coltrane song, but just that kind of idea of like, just call it what it is. Just if the veil gets lifted and someone sees the dirtiness, sees really how you think, and they give you feedback, they give you commentary, they're critical of you. Well, don't fear the criticism. Just find it as a healthy thing and learn how to use it.
See, I just think of like the hamster wheel of this one. Like this one I think is, and then the next one, the Needle's Eye, I think are the ones that are most against kind of the job is the identity or the system, like if you want to say like capitalism, like that hamster wheel of you keep on going, like it's a simple circle, you just got to keep on going. Like I think this one is his most like wink at there's got to be something more to that, because it's, you know, I take this little paper ship in the sea of fire and it's like, you know, I have not a prayer on this thing, but I keep on going. And he's like, I'm going to pretend I'm an Iron Man. So I'm, you know, invincible, and I'm keep on going, I keep on turning. And I despise, like, I hate that you saw that I'm not keeping up, that I'm still just going. But I think that's definitely like his argument of there's outside of this, there's got to be outside of this, or it's like, we can see through that, you know, how many other people you think have it all together. It's like, this is not set up for them to have it all together. There are no Iron Men we can see behind.
And no one's perfect.
Yeah, like we have that view on everybody, and so it should be evident.
Yeah. Do you have anything else on that?
No.
The next one, the Needle's Eye, that's one of my favorite ones. I feel like this one, I did not confirm this, but I feel like this one was done, because I know it was done in 2 days. The album was recorded in 2 days. I feel like the Needle's Eye was done with the first half of the album, like whenever that first half was done, because it fits that tempo. It fits the quicker feeling, you know, that jazzier feeling. And then they, and I feel like they moved it down to spread it, you know, keep that vibe more throughout the album. So it's not just a real stark first half is really bright and quicker and faster paced, and then the second half is way slower. You know, I feel like they wanted to blend it a little bit more. Just throwing that out there. But I love the Needle's Eye. That's one of my favorite ones. It's obviously it's a reference to Matthew 19, 23 and 24 about just, you know, it's easier for oh my God, I'm blanking on it.
Got your Bible verse.
Don't do it to me. But, you know.
You want me to do it?
Yeah, you go ahead.
It's easier for a camel to go through the eye of the needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven.
Yes. It's just the first line. I don't know why. But the, and it's like he doesn't even talk necessarily about like riches or anything like that.
Well, the second verse, he's talking about the money spent for war.
Well, yes.
How much we could be feeding kids.
Yes, but I take that more as, I don't know.
I mean, that's the Vietnam War right there.
And yeah, because that's the...
Because that was his big thing, too, on... in the Talk album, and then it later goes on to another one, the Whitey on the Moon. He's saying, like, there's real problems here on Earth, but they're putting people on, they're putting a man on the moon, spending all of that millions of dollars there, when it's like, how many kids could you feed with that one,
with the funding
ship, for that one trip to the moon that you spent and all that.
Well, because that's what he said. Yeah, the first line, a circle spinning faster, Earth. Like, it's got to be Earth, and getting larger all the time. Population, a whirlpool spell disaster for all the people who don't rhyme. If you're not paying attention, it's gonna just run right over you. If you're not, if you don't have personal agency and you're setting your own rhythm to how life and society is investing, pointing things out, putting their foot down. If you're not doing it in your own, you're just going to go with the times. And then my favorite line, which this is the tie to the verse, is him who don't fit through the needle's eye, him who just don't understand, a brand new sense of freedom, a brand new sense of time, him who go and stand alone now and leave the hate and fear behind. I kind of want to talk about that line, just a brand new sense of time. What do you think he means by that?
So, I mean, I think this would be like the most. I'm gonna say this is a stretch interpretation from me. Okay. But this could be the most like communist friendly song. And I know that he kind of dabbled in that because most of those radical 60s, especially like
Black Panther.
Yeah, they dabbled in kind of that.
Right.
And this, the sense of time and the sense of freedom is definitely a call to Marxist like ideology. So what he's saying, like, they're focusing on money and it's focusing on production, like the capitalist system is moving. And Marx's idea for work and for freedom was that you can have like surplus value, whatever, that comes from your work, but then you distribute that, each one to kind of their own need or whatever, but that this actually frees you up. So you're still working, but you're doing something that you want to do, and you're getting the labor, like you're getting the value of all the labor that you put into it. So that's a new sense of agency for you.
Right.
And there's actually this book I'm reading now called it's a Secular Faith. And his idea is that, and it's a Marxist sort of buildup of that, is like we have time, or we should have time as a value instead of money, because we can say like we set priorities of our life because we have a finite life. And so the measure of our time should be way more valued, and how we sort of take into account other people's time. So saying like, we live such a short life, why are you only working for this economic value or for this capitalist production when you could be working for a new value of life or a different priority of humanity? So that's why I take from that as a brand new sense of time. And that was kind of in the lexicon of the time in the 70s and definitely in the 60s for that, saying like, we don't need to be working just for cash money when we could be working for value of time and something that we want to do. And
well, that's what this whole song's about, is what's the point of extravagance when things are so uneven still?
For sure. Yeah. And then leave the hate and fear behind. So that's definitely like a war. Capitalist war was definitely like the title attributed to the Vietnam War, like why we were even there in the first place, and fear
of change, unfamiliar.
If we were taken care of, then we wouldn't need to be in those struggles.
Well, because the way I like to think about it, it's like what's the point of extravagance when things are uneven, but it's still fixable, but with the right focus. You know? Cause I feel like that's what's interesting about this song. I mean, the whole album is, it's not just a call to what's wrong or what he sees. You know, it's not a selfish perspective. It's much more of that there's still time, like there's still thing we can do about this. It's just we actually have to realize that there's a perspective we have to adopt. There's more potential to other people, you know, if we talk to them. If it's a junkie, it's not just a junkie. It's someone's son, you know, and used to be a worker, used to be maybe a father that fell apart. You know, it's like it's not that simple. It's like life is very valuable. And it's until you choose to focus on that type of life that you would appreciate it, or lifestyle, whatever. This is the song that I was trying to reference earlier. The line where it says, people wake up every morning and simply push their lives aside. They seem to carry all their feelings crushed and crumbled up inside. You know, it's like it's putting a life into work, a life into a career for nothing. Maybe just to pay the bills and get by. But there's not substance to it. There's not growth from it. It's just maybe you're just a factory lineman, you know, and that's all you do. You're just robotic work, you know. And I think we're in a phase in society where we're about to see a lot of that simple labor stuff start to get faded out by, you know, AI and robotics, and it's interesting to think about it because you know, if you're already having to swallow feelings, subdue, you know, maybe what you naturally want to do because you have to go and do this simple labor job to pay your bills and whatever, and you realize, you know, we're on the cusp of a lot of those millions of jobs, truck driver jobs, call centers are starting to disappear because you can automate that stuff easier and easier. You know, it's just going to be gone. It's not, you know, so it's like just like in Pieces of a Man, someone takes away your job, what's left? Are you crumbled? Or is there more than that? Is there more than that to you? Because there's always more than that in life, but you've chosen to just focus on this. And if that's all you have, and especially like this line where you have to wake up every morning and push yourself to the side to get in line, and to dive back into this.
That's great imagery for, people that don't like their work or can't see any end game in it potentially. I think that's why, 2020 could be a lot of unrest in one sense of saying like, well, I lost this job, or this job was different, and then I realized like, oh, I do like doing such and such at my house, or like, people moved because they realized like this wasn't where I wanted to spend my life and my time. So it's all these changes that people are making because there was suddenly, I don't know, like the commute, a lot of the rat race kind of stopped because there wasn't as much to do because things were shut down. So you rethink those priorities and look at, what is my life? What do I want it to be? What do I want it to be doing? And I think that's definitely what he's saying here. But that's a great line. Push their lives aside.
I don't know if I have anything else to add to
I like
this
I like the next little stanza there where he's just like, I went to see my father. So
yes,
it's kind of the metaphor for like a previous generation potentially. And he says, I asked him, all these questions of like, why do we keep going? Why is this this way? Why is this way? He's like,
he didn't want to answer.
Which is either like he knew the answer was pointless, or didn't know the answer,
just unaware,
or just didn't want to see it. Is kind of what this.
Well, also,
kind of makes it seem like the world must be blind. It's like they don't see it, or they don't want to see it.
Well, and I think it's tied back to Pieces of a Man of saying he didn't want to talk to me. Like in the album, it's like when the heavy moment happened, he didn't want to turn to me. And I think it's the same kind of thing as the older generation of I don't open up about what I'm going through. I'm not going to be expressive. I'm the provider. I tell you what to do and how best to walk through your life. But you're not gonna walk through life with me. You're not gonna help me dissect what just happened. Not realizing that will help them if that ever happens to them in the future. But just being selfish in the short term, thinking I'd rather protect my pride than involve you. Because then you'll realize that, because that's the thing is every child goes through that season or that moment in life when you realize one of your parents aren't a superhero, but to actively try and neglect your child to keep that from happening, I think is an old habit. So being like, I want to be perceived as the knowledgeable person in the room, the person that can be effective and can be the handyman or the know-it-all or the guidance in life. I'm that guiding light, and if I have to explain to my little boy that I couldn't even keep my job, how am I going to have that? And that's such a heavy, prideful burden to just carry on you, to think that you have to defend that stuff when all you have to do is not defend it but just explain it. It's like if you lose your job and you can't express about it to your family, especially the youngest in your family, then how are you going to be relatable to adults when you can't even relate to a child?
No, that's true. It's just such a strong holdover of how the family structure is kind of shaped within maybe American society up until recently, and even now you can't super get by. Like the majority of families don't have one income earner, that man, and he goes out there and comes back and like that's it. It's like there's multiple people working, there's potentially multiple generations in that household, but
it's very different.
All of that is kind of that holdover of like, this is what the man's role is, and you just kind of did that. And I think of like, so my parents were older, so like their parents were even older. Like my grandfather fought in World War II, and just thinking about like some of his views that have been relayed to me, because I didn't know him that well, but it's like they had such simple like aspirations on life. Like they were depression children, children of the depression. So like all of these things, like my mother always marveled at, like when my cousins who are a little bit older than me, probably like, 10, 15 years older than me, when they were born and there was like toys that they played with, it was like my grandfather and his brothers were just as interested in those toys as my cousins were, because they didn't have those things when they were growing up.
Right.
It's like we just didn't have those aspirations for those many things. Like we have such a luxury right now to have an existential crisis. It's like they would never have thought about that in war times, to be like, what is my purpose in doing this, or can I find my spark of joy or whatever. Like it was like, how can I put this food on my table so that I can live to see the next week? What's gonna fulfill me next week?
Exactly.
So in ways it's like progress, but then it's also, you feel those wheels grinding that are kind of like artificial now that we have so much abundance, and we separate ourselves from our real lives because we're creating or reinforcing this false scarcity in that sense.
Right. Like a starvation mentality when it's not, or famine mentality when it's not really like that.
For sure.
And I think like his concept of being able, trying to open up your mind to being the constantly telling you in this album that your career and your work isn't everything, that who you are isn't what you isn't just the works you do to make money for someone, it's the work you do for everyone and for yourself. I think it ties into, at the time, it might have been much more in private that you know who you are and you do your best to find a market for that. Like at that point maybe it was harder to hone in your craft and become a musician and work your way through the ranks and become successful, and you could do that with any industry just because there were less companies, there were less opportunities, and it just is what it is. The internet wasn't around, so it was also harder to network. But if you look at it today, where it's easier to network, easier to find a job nowadays, you literally just have to go to Indeed.com. That's it, and then boom. Maybe you don't want to do it, but hey, there's plenty of jobs right there. It took you 2 seconds to find potential work, right? And so it's almost like it's a difference. It's a total difference from 50 years ago, from when this album came out, that now it's not just, then it was valuable to know who you are because you need to be careful and clever and work, and to be disciplined to, make your life's work to really mean who you are. Nowadays, it's easier to get lost in the ocean of opportunities and possibilities, that now it's even more important to be aware of who you really are and what your, real ambitions are, to make sure that you don't get put into a path just because you were marketed to in a certain way, or just because you went to school with a certain person, or just because a social networking algorithm kept you in a thought bubble. It's like, it's so much more important nowadays, even when this came out 50 years ago, to be critical in that way and to be self-critical in that way, because you aren't just you nowadays. You're a mirror of everything around you, and if you're not careful of the things that are impressing upon you, then you'll get stuck in that feedback loop, and you won't, if you're not testing yourself and you're not trying to include other people that come from different walks of life and all sorts of perspectives, and you don't have to talk these things out in a calm manner, in an expressive fashion that really gets it across in a genuine sense, then how do you know what you know is right? If you're never, sharpening your spear, testing yourself, talking, opening up, and just staying in a certain way. But, it's much different nowadays than then, but it's still the same rules apply, that you still have to be careful, you still have to be critical, and that doesn't just mean critical of your fellow man, that's being self-critical.
For sure.
I don't really have anything else to add for that one. I guess we can move to the last track if you're ready.
Yeah.
So the last track. Now we are reviewing the original release of Pieces of a Man. There was a deluxe version released that include 3 additional tracks by Black and Blues, which was a band that Gil-Scott was involved with. They recorded 3 additional songs that you can find on streaming Chains, Peace, and A Toast to the People are those songs. So you can listen to them, obviously, but we will not be covering those. Just disclaimer. So the last track we're going to do here is The Prisoner. It's a very different feeling, like right off the bat. Like right off the bat.
With the orchestra.
Yeah, but it's very slow, like a very, very drawn out kind of build.
Which I don't even know. Is
long.
that even like, is it a string? Or what is that?
I don't know what exactly. I think it's a classic bass. I think it's a stand-up bass played
Just
weirdly.
Super, yeah.
I think it's maybe it's out of tune or something. It just sounds. I don't know what that is.
I was like, they don't ever credit like
What
there's
that
not
is.
an orchestra or whatever.
Yeah,
So it just must be the.
I think it's got to be like a classic bass or something, just kind of played in a weird way. I'd have to
Really
hear it
sad.
again.
This one is, I mean, this song is just super hard to listen to. Like, I feel I'm the prisoner that's trying to listen to this song. I don't know. Just gonna go.
Yeah, no, it's very long. It's almost 9 minutes. It's I don't know. It's a song about feeling trapped in society, I guess. Yeah. Here, I'm gonna pull something up about this one. If you have, do you have anything to say?
I mean, I think it is kind of tell like a broader, every black man or every, black family story, and how it's kind of like a chain, like that's the system is kind of the prison, and
Yeah, like his line, chained by the cavemen. Or
Yeah.
Caveman. Yeah, he says caveman. Just, like that kind of framework of saying that I'm trapped as a prisoner, but it's because of the multi-generational.
an extended kind of metaphor of like, this is every kind of black story in America. It's like, this is kind of where I'm at because we've set up and blah, 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 blah. And I fall into this cycle as well. And, I go and I do my little part, but I'm still chained and we're the prisoner. Prisoner. But it's, melodically just really hard to go through.
Yeah.
And you hear like kind of his weaknesses as a singer, I think, the most in this song.
I feel like maybe he had a hard time translating it to that tempo and feeling. Like, I feel like maybe they looked at the writing, like the structure, and realized like, this could play out as a slower, more serious, drawn out song, but maybe as a singer, like as the vibrance in the song, the person projecting out, maybe he didn't know how to really accompany that as much, especially this being his first, album.
First crack at that. I wonder if that because so Jackson in an interview with that OK Player interview talked about how they, with writing with Scott Heron, like he always had the music first, and then Scott Heron would come in with the lyrics. So, or at least most of the songs that they wrote together, he said he described it like that. Like he would, Jackson would have like these musics, and he's like, it would take me like 2 years to write a whole song with lyrics and all that. And this guy was pumping stuff out in 2 weeks. So he was like, he could do the lyrics, and he would just listen to the song and get the feel of it and ask me what I was feeling when I was thinking about different parts. And then he would, spit stuff to it. Yeah. But I don't know about this song because it feels like, he is stretching to like put words like in this tempo and in this rhythm. So there is, it's
maybe
not
this one's the other way.
Yeah, it's not a mismatch, but it's like two in sync. It's like you could have just, I don't know, done the spoken word over that and like had some just free range music.
Yeah, maybe maybe that's why this one's at the end. Maybe this one is one that they did, towards the end or something. It was the opposite. Maybe they didn't have the composition of the music, but they're like, we have a good poem.
Or you are just supposed to get the feeling that you're the prisoner. that's the takeaway.
Just draw it out, make them feel tortured.
I don't know. I think it's always interesting, like the order of albums.
Yeah.
I don't know. You think that this was very intentional how they did the order of these tracks?
Maybe. Because I'm also thinking this is 71, so the main way people would have heard this anyways would be on vinyl. So, when you curate an album for vinyl production, you have to be careful about how you split it in half.
Well, you had like the A sides and the B sides, so you'd mostly have like your good songs on top.
Right, sure, and that's definitely this one, like the more vibrant, faster.
Yeah, for sure.
Easier
side.
songs are on the top, but then you start the second half with. I think I'll call it Morning and Pieces of a Man. The whole thing is more serious on the second half.
Have the.
I want to make sure. Yeah, the second side starts off with Pieces of a Man.
Yeah.
The second side. So it's almost like the second side is the more serious, slowed down side. But of all of those tracks, that's like the slowest one.
Oh, yeah.
So I just feel like that's why they put it at the end, was like it fits the theme. Mm-hmm. But it's gonna be like, because again, I'm thinking about vinyl experience back then. Like when the Beatles did Sgt. Pepper, George Harrison really, really wanted "Within You, Without You" on the album, which is very Indian sitar inspired and very different from the whole album. So they purposely put that as the first track on the second side, so that if you didn't like it, you just skip it immediately and you won't miss anything else on the B side. So you had to think about that. It's like, this is the least popular song, but I think it's still good. Should I put it at the beginning so they could skip it easier, or do I put it at the end because maybe they just
playing?
Yeah, they just use it as background music. So I kind of perceive this song as, this is the serious, slower side, so let's take the most serious, slowest song and put it at the end, just in case.
So people aren't asleep by the end of this.
Yeah. Or also, I also take the last song, like me, this is total personal belief, like I take the first song and last song as being very important because...
To the artist.
Yes, because... It's the intro and the outro. I think of it like a movie. As a movie, you want the intro and the outro to be familiar in some sense of, some fashion. And so I think of music the same way that, most of the time I think it's purposeful how it's ended. That, this album almost feels like it slims down a little bit. Like it goes from being like really robust, fast-paced, hard-hitting lines, and then it gets a little slower, more serious, more to the point in certain ways. Yeah. And so by the time he gets to The Prisoner, he's like, this is the wrap up. If you're listening to this album all the way through to this point,
then you're the fan.
Yeah, then you're serious and you're listening. So I'm going to give you something that doesn't have to keep your ear dancing the whole time. Yeah. I'm just going to give something that makes your brain move.
I mean, you can definitely get that from the message of this one, but just the feel of it. I mean, the feel of it is a little different even from the slower songs.
Yes.
So it's just hard. I mean, I could see this as like him wanting to be a pinnacle message, but just the feel of the song is just so hard to take down easy, I guess.
It's almost like it's missing an instrument. Like there's something that could have kept you a little more pulled in, like in the background, while there is all this other stuff going slow. You know what I mean? Like something juxtaposition. So like while everything's slower and he's talking slower, there's something in the background that's a little more lively, yeah.
Free.
Yeah. Maybe, that's why you feel like the prisoner while you're watching the outside world be jazzy around you. But yeah, it's a very long song. But it's a phenomenal album. Like I said, I'm really very happy I found it when I was digging into it. Very surprised it took me this long to find out about it, given that I had heard, it's sampled. Well, that's also another thing that, like, as a music lover, and this platform has given me more opportunity and more discipline to dig even deeper than I would normally into certain stuff, music history stuff, is finding stuff like this and realizing that, like, I've heard this stuff just sampled, through someone else's perspective of appreciating it in their own way, and introducing it to an audience. That's how I found it.
Especially with hip hop. I mean, that
big
genre seems to have more elements of that, where a lot of rock music tries to do like either just pay homage or
Totally
try
different.
to do something completely different. So you don't have the same, like you can hear the same hooks
Right.
in some rap songs through the decade.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, the people that have sampled this have been, from a full line used in it, like Kanye, or from like Kendrick on Section 80. He uses just like a little sample part that he just repeats to turn into a good beat. It's not even like a really big thing. This album is great. It's a great example of how a great work can echo through the decades. Through different people either appreciate it, or like me, not even realizing that this was a foundation for someone that I've appreciated for a long time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, great album.
Yeah, super good. Anything else? Awesome. Well, this has been a good one. So yeah, Pieces of a Man, phenomenal album. We will keep up these album reviews. We'll have another one up pretty soon. Keep it going with the track by track breakdowns. But yeah, just been sitting down with Scott, and thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll hit you all with the next one. Until next time.
Thank you for listening. For more episodes, visit our website, musicmythpodcast.com, and follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Goodbye.